I think the strongest marketing ops people aren't the ones that are just like, well, this is the way that the systems work. It's the ones that are asking a lot of questions, a lot of whys.
Mm.
Why are we doing it this way? What are we expecting the outcomes to be? How can I make this better for everybody? How can I make it better for myself? Those are the best people I've managed, and I've seen them go so far in their careers.
What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 163 of the Humans of Martech podcast. Today we're joined by Danielle Balestra, Director of Marketing Technology and Operations at Goodwin. In this episode, we cover why enterprise Martech can be as fun as tech startups, how regulated industries actually implement AI without data disasters. We'll also demystify that enterprise software selection madness, why marketing ops folks need to become internal business consultants, and we answer if AI will eliminate marketing jobs or create better ones. All that and a bunch more stuff after a super quick word from two of our awesome partners. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Knack. I have the amazing pleasure of chatting with some of the greatest minds in marketing operations, but you'd be shocked at how many of them have the same issues when it comes to their campaign creation process. They're dealing with things like scaling, personalization, keeping assets on brand, render testing emails, working in rigid templates, and worst of all, having to hand code emails. But many of the leaders in the space are using Knack to eliminate these headaches. Knack is a no-code email and landing page creation platform that covers initial campaign requests right until the sync to your marketing automation platform. Knack improves the whole campaign creation process by bringing the building, optimization, testing, collaboration, and also translation functions all in a single spot. So you don't have to jump around and coordinate feedback between a bunch of different people or wait on developers for very simple edits. Because at the end of the day, marketing ops folks want to focus on process and efficiency. Marketers want to focus on creativity, and Knack makes sure you get both and then some. Check them out at knack.com. That's Knak, and tell them we sent you. Danielle, thanks so much for your time today. Really excited to chat.
So excited to talk with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. And let's see, I'm just going to share a quick story about how we met. So I was a newly certified Marketo expert at the Marketo Summit, and I was going around like looking for Marketo champions because it was like my dream goal to be one. And then I met Danielle, and she's like, "Oh, do you want to be a Marketo champion? I can like help you and kind of show you the way." And the rest is history. How long was that ago? Like 15 years ago?
It was a
I
while
don't.
ago.
It was
It's
a
funny,
while.
Daryl, because like I always think of us first meeting on Twitter because you were the guy
Oh,
that I would tweet and you would always seem to like me. I'm like,
Mm,
who is this guy? So I purposely went and found you at Summit because I'm like, I just need to meet you in person because you were
that's
just such a
right.
great supporter of me when I used to be on Twitter, now X. And just that bond, it's something about that Marketo world and bond when you were meeting these people who were just amazing power users. And yes, Daryl asked me at that moment, how do we get to be a champion? I gave him some suggestions. One of them worked out. I was a little jealous because my year as a champion, I got a t-shirt and Daryl comes in with like the snow jackets and custom sneakers. And I'm like, great, I got a t-shirt and this group gets like all the swag. So
Yeah. If we have time, we should like dive in a little bit because I have like a ton of stuff to like. Those were like the golden times. I call them the golden times. But anyway, I didn't know your team was so large. Like 16 for marketing ops and Martech is quite big. So congrats on building your team. Um, let's talk a little bit about, because a lot of times we talk to Martech leaders and marketing ops professionals in like SaaS, right? Or like digital, but there's like a ton of other industries. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience, working in legal and like healthcare. How is that kind of different from technology? Is it like a different pace? Do you experience different challenges? Like riff on that a little bit for us.
really, it was interesting. I was thinking through sort of my experience. And one of the things I liked about consulting was really the ability to grow and sell the concepts of like what this technology could do. And the reason why I pivoted into large enterprise was because it's an opportunity to do that internally, but also get paid, right? So like there are 16,000 or 4,000 employees across the organization, and sometimes larger than that at other types of enterprises, you know. some people want the change. Some people want the new technology. Some people want to create efficiencies. And it's about going around and finding your colleagues who also want that happening to then sell the vision and then implement it. It's a hugely, I think, exciting time when you make these big innovations in companies that are struggling to make that happen for themselves. When you're in a small tech company, it's easy because you're on a fast growth. You're getting capital to invest in the technology. You are asked to make things that will scale as you grow. So it's a little bit different flavor that way because you can get it, you can run it. They get the investment quickly. It's that sort of selling the concept, selling the efficiencies this to eventually give you. It's also being able to understand like what you're investing in when it comes to campaigns, to know like that worked well. Let's repeat this. So that's sort of, I think, one of the things that was exciting me about going into enterprise. It can be a slow pace. I joke that, my 3 enterprises was like Goldilocks. So I loved working at MSK. It's one of the best employers in the nation. They had such amazing programs, but they were extremely slow paced when I was working there. It took us like 6 months to put a preference center up. I was like, this is way too slow. So that bed was not right for me. Then I went over to CIT and it was amazing. We did some amazing things there. We did get sold at the end of my tenure there, but it was a place where we could have done more, but there wasn't a lot of investment back into being able to keep growing. So that was not the best place. And then I found Goodwin, and Goodwin has been just amazing because we have a lot of interest in evolutionizing the way legal industries work. It is really an interesting place, the legal industry. What they want to do is so amazing and so innovative. And we have an amazing new leadership here with a new COO. We have a new chairman, and they are all about running business with data and intelligence. So it's right up exactly what I'm looking to do and help them with, which is using the information we have to make very impactful decisions to keep growing the business.
You mentioned the slow pace there, and I actually started my career in like a co-op work term during university, and one of my first gigs of like a real job was in government in Canada, like massive enterprise institution, and that's the thing that like jumped out to me too, that made me really question whether like a bigger team was where I was going to be happiest. Was like the slow pace, the number of approvals before you could get certain things to the finish line. But it was also like the tools and the tech that was just like right off the bat scratched off, and we couldn't use those things because of security and compliance and governance. Do you ever feel like a bit of FOMO being in enterprise or in like that more compliant space? Like at Goodwin, you're running a stack on MS Dynamics, and before that, like you mentioned, you were a Marketo power user. Like to me, and Daryl and I chatted a bit about this before, like they're legacy enterprise tools ish, like Marketo's like circa 2006, Dynamics long history, ERP like Microsoft 2001. Like a lot of folks have a ton of respect for the pioneers in this space, like we just talked about. The community that Marketo built around champions and stuff like that. But one could argue that in terms of innovation and UI and legacy, Martech is still kind of operating like it's 2010. Like, what are your thoughts here? Like, do you ever have a bit of FOMO not using the latest and newest Martech?
All right, let's go through a couple of those. So the first one I'm going to talk to is about the regulations. So, being in a healthcare organization, being at a bank, do you really want to put your that data out there for anyone to grab? Like that's
Yeah.
number one, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of things were still behind firewalls, but in my time at both of those organizations, they were moving to cloud. And granted, these are more institutional, older systems. Like, you got Adobe, you got Salesforce. Like they evolve their programs, their systems, so that you can have good firewalls up in place and that it's not dangerous to put your information in the cloud. So, every organization I've worked in that's highly regulated is moving aspects to the cloud. Not everything, but a good portion of it is going into the cloud. And I also just want to say that these heavily regulated industries had things in place like data lakes and orchestration systems well before they were introduced in the last handful of years. I always laugh because, I think me and Daryl were at a conference this past summer and they were talking about this concept. I'm like, the banks and even some of my financial institution clients and friends that worked at places like Morgan Stanley, they've had this in place for over 2 decades. Like, this is old hat for them. And it's just new for the tech world. So to assume that an enterprise wasn't on cutting edge because they really did understand your behaviors, what you're doing, how to like keep you engaged, keep you using their products. Like they've always had, especially in the banking and the financial industries, like credit cards, they have that information. They've been leveraging that for quite some time. It's just that now maybe more of it's cloud-based and not custom built internally. So I think that's the big difference. But when it comes to getting new systems in, I laugh because I know a lot of tech people who work in tech, and they have the other problem where their friends like created this software and their boss now is asking you to buy it, and you're like, "What? I don't need this thing." So we don't have that problem. That's never a problem in the regulated industries because our problem is onboarding. So like to clear a vendor onboarding, you need to be in that for a long haul and you need to do as much diligence ahead of time to bring them to the process. So like we purchased when I was at CIT an event business scanner technology. The timing of all this was hilarious because we started the process in 2019 and we ended the process in the middle of 2020, right? Great timing. It's amazing timing.
Yeah.
But it took us almost a year and change to process that. And even in that course of that time, the vendor sold themselves to somebody else. So when we started the project, it was named the company it was before the deal finalized. So granted, like, again, that's a smaller organization. It was acquired in the course of it. So it's not so much that type of thing that's a challenge for highly regulated companies. All tech companies who want to sell enterprise are working on being secure and making sure they can pass that SIG 6, whatever it is. So that's not a concern. It's about processing. And if the processing is going to take 9 months and you have a need and you want it in 6 months, you might go back to those big enterprise guys who have a whole bunch of stuff in their portfolio because it's faster to process an invoice than to onboard a new technology. That's really, it's a good and it's a bad thing. It saves us from having the like on the whim purchases. But if there is something you really need, you have to wait for it to be processed and brought in-house. And I will talk to Dynamics because this was my first time working with Dynamics. And, I heard all the rumors about it, but I got to say, working with an organization that still does their own programming and builds from their own code is pretty awesome. So like we have Copilot for Sales. We have so many amazing integrations natively within our own CRM. We're using their customer insight journeys, which is their email application, to have all that data in one system and not worry about integrations from system A to system B and what broke and what created duplicates. It's not there. So, and everything's available to be pulled out into BI reports through Fabric. There's abilities to make data quality great. So like it takes some of the integration problems that a lot of ops people spend a lot of time on to figure out like, why is this in Salesforce, but it's in Marketo? Like that disappears. So, and I got to say hats off to Microsoft for keep building their products. Granted, this thing, as you said, has been around since Great Plains or whatever, however far back it goes, but they keep iterating on it. And it is, apples to apples with Salesforce. So, they both require configurations. They both need to be set up the way your business runs. But the difference is they're not purchasing, they're building. So I think that actually has created a lot of efficiencies.
That's pretty crazy. Like I'm like pleasantly surprised to know that you feel that you're getting the functionality and capabilities, out of these sort of like more monolithic platforms versus, typically a lot of times in Martech, we're kind of like hacking stuff together. I wanted to say that I think that that's like one of the big differences too, I think, between like being at a more agile company and like even in a company like mine, it's much more difficult to try stuff. Like, hey, can we just connect to this? And it's like, no, not really. You can't really do that. So I think it's just a really different way, and it's why I really liked having you on the pod because it's cool to see the other side of things. Why don't we talk a little bit about like building Martech stacks like at the enterprise level. And because it could be a little bit different. And I'm like currently running a workshop with a group of folks, and the exercise that we're going through is for a specific business case. We're building, we're picking from a selection of Martech tools. So here's Salesforce, here's Outreach, and here's this, and we're all connecting them together in a hypothetical scenario. Is it very different? When it comes to enterprise, the different companies that you've been at, like have you been able to have your choice, or were you sort of siloed into, well, it's got to be from this vendor because that's our vendor of choice?
Well, some of them, yeah, they decided the choice was, let's say, Salesforce. We went with Salesforce and we built from there. And it's also needing to know like what you actually have to do, like what's your go-to-market and what is the customer expecting from you. Do they really want so much personalization from a bank? Do you want to hear from your bank every day? Probably not. Like you need to know relevant information at certain points. And then it's attraction. So like maybe the build is more about the actually ad tech connections than it is about the actual keeping the client and keeping the customer growing. And it's not sometimes it's not B2B sales. So like it might not be journeys or as full of a funnel. So it depends on what you're working with. So like where I am today, it's more relationship based. Like think about it. If you're thinking of you have to build a new company, or you're going to probably ask who somebody knows to lead you to the partner, to the lawyer that you might want to work with, right? It is truly that type of a business. So there's technology out there that helps us identify who people know, how frequently are they talking to them, and also key marketing information like what events do they attend. So like really, it's that type of build for that type of organization. If you are more of a B2B sales type of thing, then it's a different build. So like it depends on the industry, how you're going to market, and are you truly like, is your Martech going to your customer, or is it going to prospect, or is it going to referral programs? Depends on the configuration. And then from there, it's about, is there automations that need to happen? So I think there's some stacks that like people automatically think I need this, this, and this. Like I need something to do webinars. I need something that's going to host events. I need something that does, like that might not be the case. And so what is the minimums you need, and then what will be the most impactful. I also think about the expense of some of these tools, and they can really grow out of control. So it's about also being mindful of where we're spending dollars, and is it really going to be impactful for putting those systems in place?
Yeah. And I think also like volume of data and volume of messaging too plays like a big role in like how your tech stack is constructed. I think that if you're in the, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands of messages a year, or database size, then your tech stack is going to look a certain way. If you're like in the millions, especially like per week or per day, I think the tooling it needs to support that too. Another thing I do think that you bring up a good point about the cost. The cost is getting pretty crazy. I think and I think we're going through some sort of maybe revolution in pricing, because for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, it's just been, some sort of exorbitant cost. It's cost like $100,000 to get either like a CRM or a marketing automation platform. And then it just grows 8% per year for nothing. It's just like, and I remember negotiating a contract where like you literally don't have a choice. You have to pay the 8%, and you like try to pretend you're going to switch, but you can't. They know you can't. So
yeah.
What I'm seeing now is that there's especially with a lot of the new players, they're moving toward usage based pricing. They're how many API calls you're using.
Oh yeah,
I love
that's
this
a new thing. I was like, what are we talking about? You're going to charge me for the API connection? Since when has that become a thing? It's a new thing, and it's a real pain in the neck. I'm like, I need your system to talk to mine. You're going to charge me now to do that, and it's a yearly cost to maintain that. Wow.
Well, as an add-on, oh hell no, like that's terrible. That's like like highway robbery or whatever. But I think what could be interesting, and what I'm seeing in the market now, is like these outcome-based pricing. Especially with the talk of like AI agents and stuff like that, where hey, if the tool successfully completes something for you, then there's a cost. not for things that are arbitrary like seats or database
Mhm.
size. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Yeah, I'm curious to ask you about AI, Danielle, because like I come from a startup background where we're obviously not completely careless about data and privacy. You're sharing stuff with LLMs, but like there's a lot less emphasis there when you're smaller and you're just like trying to keep the lights on like day to day. There isn't often like privacy focus. There isn't like an IT team or like no in-house counsel. Like what are your thoughts on AI and marketing ops at your enterprise scale and in regulated industries? Like you worked in healthcare, then you went to finance, now you're in legal. Like, what are your thoughts on, AI tooling and the fact that like maybe you can't hook up like DeepSeek to like your processes and your iPaaS stack that like a startup might be willing to like experiment with a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts there?
So I'm going to just share that Goodwin's clients are sometimes those organizations. And because of that, we
Mm,
also want to be using our clients' tools. So when ChatGPT really took off, 2 Decembers ago, we had an AI committee immediately formed and we immediately started addressing this. How are we going to do it? What are our concerns? What does the hallucinations look like? How can we
mm,
leverage this at a law firm? And how can we put safeguards around it? I went to the Forrester event this past spring, and it was interesting because you have a lot of large enterprise there too, and it was a huge focus. Everyone wants to leverage this technology. It's about making sure it's not hallucinating. So guess what everyone's focusing on? Their data. So I said, this is great because it's going to have amazing downstream impacts for us in marketing
yeah.
because guess what? People are going to actually start cleaning their databases. It's going to be amazing. So, from our standpoint, I just literally had a call earlier with a person on my team, and he's building out a chat agent to help verify some information as we're building press releases. And it's pretty amazing that we have this in house, that we are playing around in a secure environment, and that we can leverage our internal data systems to bring the app agents in to help us with confirming or validating stuff as we're creating the copy. So, and again, we have amazing colleagues who are very interested in this and they want to leverage it. So for us, it's about putting the safeguards in place, understand what the technology can do, what it can do wrong, to look for those. Um, and again, it's validate. Don't just like take it, throw it on a plate and be like, here it is, but like make sure it really is working. Do a lot of testing, do a lot of, probing adjustments. And again, our biggest focus right now is data. We're like working through cleaning and accurately making our data so that these agents can do what they need to when we build them out.
totally, totally. Think speaking of AI, and this is kind of like a slightly different spin on the question that I was going to ask you, but I feel like, and I wonder if this is your experience with enterprise, or this is like you think the same way I do, that at enterprise there's a lot of specialization of roles. So people do, whereas at a smaller company you wear many hats.
Mhm.
At enterprise, some people wear like one hat. And with AI coming and automating and accelerating a lot of those roles, it makes some of those roles quickly kind of obsolete. And for me, I'm not as afraid for like marketing ops folks because I feel like we're so um diversified in the things that we can help out with, and we understand technology, and you need to understand tech to run AI. So I'm not too scared about that, but I wonder like how many jobs that are marketing or GTM sort of adjacent are going to be going away at the enterprise level, or are going to be under fire because we are launching AI so quickly.
So one, I don't think anyone's going anywhere. If anything, it's the same issue of like once we moved to the web and everyone got a website and everyone expanded. I worked in publishing and I'm like, when we used to do ads and you sell it to like those ad networks and it's going all over the web, you're submitting 1 or 2 ad copies, and that's just the thing that's following you across the sites. Now imagine if AI is able to help adjust the copy and adjust the look and feel depending on where the hell you are, if it's still promoting that thing within within a, descriptive, direction about what this should always be messaging so that it's the right experience at the right place. So like we've never gotten that right, in my opinion. And I think that's why there's been
Yeah.
so much pushback on digital advertising and why so many ad blockers and all of the things is because we never got that right. We do it and it's not done well. Now we might be able to do it really well, but that means volume and that means people checking and that means like there still needs to be a guidance over it. On the other side of it, it should create more efficiencies for people. So yes, if people are just literally pushing the thing across the table every day, that's no longer a valid job. But if it's going to teach you how to program your Excel files better and for automations to start happening and things that you didn't know you could actually do, I find that actually the AI is teaching my teams way faster and they're developing faster because these agents are teaching them how to code things or how to build things in Power BI that like could have taken how many in-person sessions. So if anything, they're getting smarter and they want more difficult work. So that's where I think we could be going. But yes, if you're the pusher of paper, those jobs will start going away.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm totally on board with the idea of, which is like kind of what you're saying, where like AI is going to empower our people more, teach them faster, and our jobs, especially for people that know what they're doing, are going to evolve. And I love that concept. My fear is for functions where they hire too many people to do like a single job. And I keep thinking back to of like ad operations, for example. Like I think some teams, you know, because there was so much value in like tweaking ad performance, right? Because you could optimize that. But once the advent of like programmatic came out, where it could start to tweak it itself, you had like entire ad operations teams where it's like, oh, we hired too many people for this single. That's where I think is it the sort of like fear of getting laid off is going to come in, where you hired many people to do like a single job that probably could have been automated. Um,
And also,
anyway,
how much effort are they putting into cleaning the data? So, I mean, how many marketing ops persons have you met where they're the one person mark ops team and they have to deal with all of the things breaking because the data is bad? The companies are not putting that money in, job security's there because guess what? There's going to be a lot of people chasing the agents to understand why information's incorrect or the wrong experience is happening. The same way mark ops teams are just fighting fires every day.
This episode was brought to you by our friends at Census. You probably have over 15 tools in your marketing tech stack, but how many of them have the full picture of your customer's journey? Census is the universal data layer in your stack. It unifies and cleans data from all your sources and makes it available for any app to use. Census makes it super easy to unify and standardize customer data, then enrich and enhance it, like running deduplication, cleaning, scoring, and routing workflows, and then sync and activate that data across all of your tools so you can actually do something with it. For marketers and data teams that work together to power big campaigns, it's so refreshing to work from a reliable source of truth. Don't just take my word for it though. Census is loved by awesome companies like HubSpot, Perplexity, Canva, Clay, Notion, and many more. Check them out at getcensus.com and tell them we sent you. Yeah, it's a really cool topic about like what are some of the jobs that are being replaced faster because of AI? Is it like most folks think it's on the execution end? Like I think that was part of your answer there, Danielle, like versus the thinking and the reasoning that is still going to be done by the humans. There's like one topic with AI that Daryl and I chat with a lot of different guests, that AI does have really unique applications when it does come to the thinking part of things and not just on the execution. And it's this future where like marketers aren't creating audiences manually and sending messages to them. And instead, machine learning is building propensity models and predicting who is the right audience to receive what message at what time. And for a lot of companies, some, especially in enterprise and in tech, this is already a reality. Like this is in place. We chatted with Paul Wilson when he was at Salesforce. He's like, yeah, Salesforce has been doing this for like 5+ years. There's no marketer deciding a list to send an email to. Like there is a machine deciding that. But like the transformation to regulated industries, I feel like is going to be a lot slower. Trusting AI to send messages related to legal information or financial or healthcare, like you mentioned earlier, we get into a whole box of like PHI and PI, and the guardrails have to be much larger. What are your thoughts on like this aspect or this application of AI?
It's different because you can't assume because somebody in your family had cancer, you're gonna have somebody else in your family have cancer. So, like, there's no history of information you can build off of to do that. Maybe it's referrals, like maybe doctors who treat patients that are most likely, in a high concentration area where a lot of people get cancer, just keeping that relationship alive and making sure they refer their patients to that doctor. That might make sense, but you have to think about it, like, a lot of these things are based on past behaviors, right? You needed this thing in the past, or you tend to look for these things on the websites because this is your type of job. When it comes to these very unique things, like you're a person who has a banking account, like there's only so much you can do because it's a forward thinking thing. Are you buying a house? I don't know. Because you're in this age group doesn't mean that you absolutely are going to buy that house. Like, are you buying a car? You might not be buying a car. Why should you start getting stuff about loans? Like, should you be pushing credit cards? Like, a lot of that, it doesn't make sense. So, like, I don't think it's relevant to the business, especially with the legal industry. Like, it's not, we don't know what your problem's going to be. Like, we hope that we're helping you with acquiring capital from a venture capitalist, or we hope that we're helping you sell your company or you acquire a company. Litigation, we have no idea. We have no idea who's going to have, a lawsuit because something happened. So, like, there's no true path for that analytics to work because there's no historical patterns to say when a company does this. Like, you guys could start building a product tomorrow, but there's no history on that you built a technology and that you need fundraising and that you're going to evolve and need employment law. Like, that's like, it's I think those things work in the history, and I think that's also where we get in trouble, is that because something you did in the past doesn't mean that's what you need in the future, you know?
Yeah, I can't speak to the legal application, but I did have a stint in healthcare, and there is like, claims codes from like certain things, doctor visits. There's a lot of first party data from, did you go on this page? Are you also using this other tool? Are you on this platform? What area of the world are you living in? There's certain concentrations that have more prominent health issues in one part of the state or whatever. Like, there are ways, maybe not as perfect as like tech or B2B or whatever, but like I've consulted with healthcare clients that were selling pretty niche healthcare applications and products that were able to build propensity models. When a new user signs up, they have very similar demographics as all of these high quality converting users. And maybe it doesn't make sense to send like a discount offer to that new user because they have the profile of someone that's going to convert anyways, versus someone who signed up and they look a bit different and they look more similar to someone that doesn't have a high LTV. So the machine knows to like send a discount to that person. Like, just kind of riffing off the top of my head of like
Yeah, I think
ideas.
it's a sensitive subject, right? Like,
Yeah.
do you want some random system to say, like, I understand you have cancer? Like, you might not even told your spouse or your children yet. Like,
Yeah.
why? It's one of those questions of like, cause you can do it, should you do it? Like, when Apple released an update that told me my car was in front of my house and I wasn't on the train when I should have been, I was like, I'm sorry, Apple. You don't need to know where I'm supposed to be. Just because you're tracking my
Mm,
location does not mean I actually want that. And I think the best healthcare providers and the best banks out there are respecting that trust with their customers and their prospects, that they can do it, but they know that's something sensitive that people won't appreciate.
mm.
Because we know, like, there's also stuff that's being shared with insurance, and we can't go into that topic, but like that's it makes it even harder to, like,
Yeah.
you want people to come and get healthy and you want them to get the best services they can.
Mm.
And there's so many factors that will prevent them, but you don't want to lose their trust. And when it comes to a health issue or it comes to your banking, you really don't want them sharing information that you didn't feel should be shared.
Yeah. Feeling creeped out about it is probably the worst feeling in in that industry. It's bad enough in tech when you do feel that like you were violated, your like digital rights are violated a little bit there. But you mentioned that like hiring folks with the experience and the background ideal for highly regulated industries like legal, finance, and health tech. It's really tricky, and that a lot of the folks who don't have that experience are quickly kind of like slapped with the reality of restrictions and regulations and training and blah blah blah. Do you think that a Martech pro who doesn't have a background in one of those regulated industries can still add value to a new role that's just opened up on your team? Like, what's your pitch to folks like Daryl and I, or folks listening who work in tech and don't have that regulated background? What's your pitch for having us join enterprise regulated industries?
So I prefer to have the smartest people on my team. You don't have to have the industry background. Bring me people who know the products that we have. And I would actually give a series of like, these are the tools, or these are the similar tools. Like, I want people who can smartly talk about how they manage these pieces. The biggest compliment I've gotten from my current job is from my director of CRM. And she said, I love the work-life balance. I know I'm not working weekends. I'm not rushing to answer emails at night. So there is a balance. Granted, it can go slow. I joke because when I was at MSK, I didn't get an email after 4 p.m. I was like, this is so weird. I went from a place where I was rock and roll until 1 a.m. in the morning. And here I come into MSK, and it's like from like around 9:30 till 4, that's when everyone's talking to each other. And then officially everyone shuts down. I'm like, this is interesting. So like, I knew I had my nights and weekends. And as a parent, I love that. I think you get to work with some very interesting individuals. And because, to Daryl's point, some of them are specialists, you get to really get to be deeper in your area of expertise. So like, if wearing 1,000 hats is not for you and you're burning out because there's only so much brain space you can have in a day to be switching from topic to topic, and there's only so much patience you have about processing the requests that are urgent, that is not a problem for you because you should have had forewarning about that. Like, you're in a space where you're a specialist and you're only focusing on the one thing, not the 8 things that could be going on. So I don't know. Did I sell it to you guys?
Yeah, I love the work-life balance angle there too. I love, like, even in companies where, folks are in different time zones, and maybe you're sending a message at like 4 p.m. at the end of your day, but it's actually 7 p.m. for someone on the East Coast. Like, you can schedule Slack messages, you can schedule emails, like schedule it so that it's like the first thing that lands in their inbox the next morning. Because like, if you're sending a message to someone after hours, to someone that is likely going to be opening it, you're taking them away from like off hours, So I'm a huge fan of scheduling stuff. A lot of folks, I tell them about it, they're just like, wow, I had no idea you could do that in Slack. It's like, yes, do it.
Yeah, we have a lot of people. We are a global office. So like, when we turn on our computers in the morning, there's probably like a dozen emails from our European team.
Yeah.
But there's a culture of respect. So like, they're not expecting that the moment they send it, you're responding. They know that you're going to respond when you roll in at 9. And we're respectful that when we send them the message after their 5 p.m., that we know we'll hear from them tomorrow. So it's that nice, again, work-life balance where, globally, we understand. We try and make meetings where you have our West Coast, our East Coast, and our Europeans. Everything seems to be around like 12 o'clock. So like, big group meetings, 12 o'clock, so that everyone can attend. Nobody's staying late or coming on early. Like, it's a nice, and I think that's how most of the global organizations I work for, like, trying to find that medium where everyone can participate, but nobody's like going outside of their work hours to do it.
Totally. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about like, vendor selection, picking the right tools and platforms of vendors to work with. There's an incredible amount of bias, and I'll admit, for even myself, like, if I hear a lot of my peers saying, "Oh, this platform sucks. I hate this platform," then going into a vendor evaluation, I'm just like, we're not picking that one for sure. But it's so funny, and I've told this to Phil too. Like, I haven't even used some of the platforms, so like, how do I know? So like, are you the same way, Danielle? Like, how do you go about choosing the tools that you're going to work with? Do you try to eliminate bias? Is there ways that you do that? Tell us about that.
Well, I shared with you guys earlier, vendor onboarding is a challenge. So when we make a decision, it really has to be fully vetted as far as we can go. And it's really hard, right? Because these companies have some of the best sales folks ever when it comes to like what their product can do. I mean, probably the biggest thing I have to vent about is the sales process generally is like, right, you fill out a form asking for a demo, you have an inside sales rep validating your information, you go on to another call with the account rep and they validate the same information the third time. And you're sitting there thinking like, don't you have a CRM that literally had all the answers of what I answered 3 times? Like, why are we doing this again? And then begging them to show us the actual product, right? Because everything is solved in this magical tool. But when you actually get to see the product, you're like, oh, this actually didn't meet what we were actually thinking about. So, I mean, there are true RFPs and there is conversations with peers. And I do dig in deeper about, what's the challenge? Because that was one of the things I heard a lot about Dynamics was like, Dynamics is very antiquated. And I'm like, why? It's run by an IT department that's running it like it's a Siebel system. So there is like only this many updates every month and things are in backlogs and not being addressed. I'm like, well, that's an operational problem. That's not the technology problem. So, you have to make sure that when we're having the conversations about why somebody's not loving their product, what is that why? Make sure that we understand it really is a shortcoming of the tool or is it just a shortcoming of the implementation?
And
Very cool.
do you like, let's say, for example, you're trying to solve a problem with a net new tool. Do you do the whole, like, what is it called? Dog and pony show, where it's like you have a scorecard and you mark each of them, or you don't do that?
I don't do it as deeply as that, but yes, what we
Okay.
do is so for me, I'll talk about, we onboarded an event marketing tool. I'm not going to say the name of it, but what we did was we were trying to run these huge enterprise level events, like where we're having thousands of people come and there's multiple agenda tracks and some people will be invited to this thing at that event or some people will be invited to both things.
It's like a virtual conference.
No, these are, some of them are in person, some of them are virtual, but like the in-person ones are pretty substantial. And, I ended up bringing not only the Martech team who would be operating it, but I brought the event team who actually helps coordinate the logistics. I brought the client development team who creates the content. I brought the creative team to come in who's going to be doing the visuals. I did bring some of the information security teams in just to be part of like the implementation back end. So having the group of committee of like, this is what's going to be changing in your world. One, it helps us get everyone on board and sort of excited about this. Two, it gives us a voice to validate and prevent that bias. Like maybe I've used this someplace before and I think this is the best thing since sliced bread. But when everyone's sitting there in the room and they're like, actually, this doesn't meet half the room's requirements, it's sort of out. So like having it done a little bit by committee, get those user stories and then sort of get the findings. Here's the requirements from everybody. Okay, everyone went through the demos. Tell me, did it meet 1, 2, and 3? And then we get the votes. So that at the end, the one that most met the requirements becomes the one we go with.
And the one that is kind of leading the pack, do you do a proof of concept with them or like sandboxing before you sign the final contract?
I wish we could, but it's usually very hard because nobody wants to do that. They want a sale, especially when you're enterprise. They're not going to let you test it out because when you find they have the hiccups, they don't want you to be like, nope. So it's very hard to get that. We tend to do a 1-year agreement before we do a multi-year agreement as a testing period, or we have a clause inside of our contract to say we're going to use you for a year, and if it doesn't work out, we're going to cancel within the first year of the 3rd-year contract. So that tends to be our way to do what you're sharing, which is like test it out, but having a way to prevent future expense loss if it's not working out for us.
Yeah, fair enough. Easier said than done, especially with enterprise scale. Like a proof of concept can only be broken down into a small part of the implementation that doesn't require like a 6 months implementation for a proof of concept. Like if it's going to take 6 months to do a POC, might as well sign a 1-year contract and like test it out to our full system, it's fully integrated. Like there's that balance there.
Yeah, and sometimes it requires the resourcing to connect everything. So like it's hard to just there's no like random sandbox place where we have fake data and be like, here, let's do this. Like it's all live system. So it becomes a little bit more of a risk.
Yeah, I like your approach about like the user stories on like catching those biases. Like, oh, I've used that tool in the past and it's amazing. We need to like use it again. You actually led a workshop at Martech World Forum, ran by our buddy Juan on, I think your topic was like marketing ops teams trying to figure out responsibilities like taxonomy, compliance, event tracking, budget management. And like one of your posts on LinkedIn was just like, no two mops team is the same. Yeah, I'm curious to like hear more about that workshop there. Walk us through that.
So it was a small group that was there. And what I was trying to share is like there are two sort of like industry known approaches. There's the Ethos approach, which is more like centric on the platform operations, the campaign operations, the intelligence, and the system development. And then you have Forrester, who's actually looking at it a little differently with the planning, the budgeting. You have the business intelligence, again, with the measurement and analytics. You have data management, the technology ownership, and then processes. So, in the workshop, I actually created, I think it was 4 or 5 different scenarios of where you could be sitting. Are you sitting in a company that just got funding and you're employee number 10? Are you a person who's at a company that's about to go through a rebranding? Are you in a company that just merged with another company? So now you have 2 of everything and now you have to consolidate. Are you in a company that's about to go public? So going through all those different scenarios, and are you in a company that just is like sort of staying where it is? It's just sort of an enterprise that's slowly growing by a percentage point each year. So, each one of those have a different requirement for the marketing ops team and the maturity levels. If you're in a fast-paced small organization, you don't need 4 to 5 different people. You might need 1 to 2. But within those 1 to 2, you need these skill sets that they need to start developing so that once you get to that next level and you've grown that big, went from like 50 employees to now there's 1,000 employees, you need to then further develop that team and have more and split that up a little bit more. I do think the ops teams always have some element of managing the process, managing reporting, managing our software. The cool thing, like I currently have a group that manages budgets, which I think honestly should be part of it. Like we should be managing the marketing department budgets because we understand the processes. I know, love Daryl. Like we know the processes, we know the measurement to talk about ROI. We should be helping the chiefs with managing their budget. It's just the way our brains process. We are a data people. The only difference is it's numbers as opposed to like actual information. So our brains are naturally the sort of puzzle people, the ones that can sort of understand a data story. It's just dollars. That's the only difference as opposed to like actual names.
I feel like that's a good shout out for our friends at Uptempo, Daryl, Tao, like hearing about marketing ops, owning budget. Should be happy to hear that.
Totally. No, so I found this out. When you start to influence the budget or own it or, facilitate it, it's immediate authority and respect. So I've always recommend that. Earlier on, I actually didn't know that. But once you start to get exposure to the finances, not only does it elevate your status, like marketing ops status, but it helps you think more clearly too. Like I find that if you only do tech, you get very siloed in the tech. So you like disregard other things. But the tech is just a part of a larger team and a larger story. And seeing the budget tells you the whole story. So it's like it's such a great thing that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about enough about. You have to do the budget thing. The other thing about your answer, which I love, is I feel like you've still taken that consultative approach, to your own work and to the different companies, and that's a big deal too. And when I did a presentation at MOPSA, one of my first like not predictions, but one of my first like posits was we need to not be operations people anymore. We need to be like operations consultants, internal consultants for the business, and not be like beholden to these like playbooks that either we had a long time ago or that Martech or like the Martech vendors give us. So I just love that whole idea of like, let's think for ourselves, on like what's going to best support this unique business in this unique market with this unique set of people. You know what I mean?
I mean, that was probably one of the things I took away from leaving the consulting world was like, okay, for me personally, for my jobs, I think of my positions as projects. What am I going to learn and what are they going to benefit from me helping them, right? So it is almost like a consultant experience, but I'm a full-time employee. So to me, I'm like, whenever I think about that, I want to leave smarter, stronger, and possibly having new challenges coming to me because of what I've left behind. And I think to your point, Daryl, like I think the strongest marketing ops people aren't the ones that are just like, well, this is the way that the systems work. It's the ones that are asking a lot of questions, a lot of whys. Why are we doing it this way? What are we expecting the outcomes to be? How can I make this better for everybody? How can I make it better for myself? Those are the best people I've managed, and I've seen them go so far in their careers. It's really exciting to see them being promoted to directors at this point. So like it's when you have that hunger of question and that thirst for knowledge and the push to just say like this could be done better, I can free up my time if I do this a little bit differently. I just need to get these other people on board with this and learn how to have those conversations and like share like it's not only benefiting you as the person it's impacting, but it's benefiting them because it's impacting them positively. That helps them. That helps them grow so fast.
Totally.
Yeah. Such a cool answer. Danielle, it's been a super fun conversation. We're getting short on time, but we have a fun question that we ask everyone. You're a Martech leader, obviously. You're also a conference speaker, and you're also a big soccer fan and a New York Mets fanatic, movie buff, and an avid reader. I love the avid reader and movie buff myself as well. But yeah, like I said, one question we ask everyone on the show is, how do you remain happy and successful in your career? And how do you find balance between all the things you're working on while staying happy?
Yeah, so I shared a little bit just in my last answer is I want to keep growing and I want to keep being challenged. So that's one of the things is like, am I learning about it at a conference? Is it a book I'm reading? Is it a webinar I'm listening to? But at the same time, I also have a family and there's things that are important to me personally. Am I growing? Am I learning? I really love movies to watch them. I just think it's so amazing how they put these things together and how they tell a story visually and they have the sound and like it's a full, to me, experience. So getting my kids to also like some of these things is very fun. Like to know that like me and my kids, my husband not so much, but like we'll go to the movie theater, we'll have the whole experience, we'll get some food. Like it's having that balance of like enjoying my life as well as learning and developing all the time. So not pushing myself to just be the best and the highest level I could be. It's like being proud of what I delivered, keep growing from that, but also enjoying being a human and experiencing human and hearing people's stories and listening to them, through their movies or through their words on pages and cheering people on for their physical successes, such as the women's soccer teams and, happen to see the Mets who never go anywhere. But I think this will be a good year for us. So I'm very excited for them.
TV show fan too, or mostly
Oh,
movies?
yeah. I love right now I'm watching Severance.
Oh, I was just going to ask you if you watched Severance. I
great.
just watched it during lunch with my wife.
I didn't finish this week's episode, but it's just the concept. When I first saw it, I was like, can you imagine actually going to work and not knowing what you did all day? In some places, that'd be great. In some places, I don't know. But the more the concept's clear, like showing like you really are a different person when you're inside that like floor, like such an interesting concept. Patricia Arquette, I hope she comes back because she.
Oh yeah, I think we'll see her again. She's in like the main intro, so she's got to be back. Do you watch, Daryl?
Yeah, well, I only watched season 1, so I have to get started on season 2. But I will say, no spoilers, but the twist at the end for me was like crazy. I was like, oh my god!
I know I had to go back and watch it when I started.
I was just like, I kind of want to watch the finale again. Yeah, just before I start season 2.
Yeah.
I gotta catch up to you guys.
Just Apple TV has the best program. I'm also like rewatching some Ted Lasso episodes, praying that they come out with season 4. But just like it's the human elements. It's not only just the stories, but like things like Ted Lasso and Shrinking. It's just the human interactions that are just so nice and positive to see. When I think right now everything's a little crazy, so I'm like, we can do this. We as humans could do this. It'd be good.
Love it. Appreciate your time, Danielle. This is super fun. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.